Da 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. Da 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 da.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking and Reviews, and we are back with more Halloween 2021 reviews. So if you're liking what we're doing on the channel, especially right now, make sure you're hitting that like button. Make sure you're subscribing if you're not a subscriber. Just hit the subscribe button, please. No, I always feel like everybody just sounds so desperate when they say hit that subscribe button and smash that. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. It helps with my motivation. If you don't feel like it, fine. Or you can hit the subscribe and then hit unsubscribe. Fuck with me. I don't care. But if you are, yes, like, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so if you are new, welcome to the conversation. If you're returning, as always, welcome back. How you doing? So, yeah, we've done House. We've done Nightbreed. We've done Body Bags. We've done Chopping Mall. Now we're doing something near and dear to, let's see, I was 22 years old in 1997 when this came out, October 17th of 1997, and we're talking about the classic, and I don't care what anybody says, the classic, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, this is one of those movies that, is why I started my channel in the first place, is to eventually get to movies, that came from the era of when I was growing up. I talk about a lot of modern stuff. I've been talking about stuff from a really long time ago. But rarely do I get to allow myself to talk about something that's very nostalgic to me. That comes from that part of my life where I was young and super stupid, and I'd see movies 2 or 3 times. I remember as the credits start rolling on this, the Mandalay Tiger, there were so many movies back then that had the Mandalay Tiger running out at you. I remember seeing that for the first time thinking, wow, it was actually really kind of scary. The first time I saw it was that black and white tiger coming out of the forest. It is pretty effective production titles. But this movie, along with like Scream and other films of the like that came out in this time period, just were big deals. They were big deals for us back then. And they were different from the horror movies of the 70s and the 80s. You had writers like Kevin Williamson, who was writing this. The guy who wrote Scream. He went on to do Dawson's Creek, and he was the talk of the town for a really long time, right? Or what felt like a really long time. Everybody was trying to get their hands on Kevin Williamson. People, don't really talk about the writing in horror movies like Friday the 13th or the Halloween movies or, Nightmare on Elm Street. Although Nightmare on Elm Street, ideas were always really clever. But the dialogue and the acting was always eh. But then in the mid to late 90s, we started getting like solid actors, people that were up and coming that ended up being big actors. Again, can't say that for a lot of people from horror movies. You get one every once in a while. Every once in a while you get a Jamie Lee Curtis. You know, and I'm not saying that there aren't popular people that have been in horror movies that became something like Johnny Depp. That kind of thing. But movies like this, they had star power. These are people that most of them all had pretty big careers, still going pretty big, can do whatever they want, you know, for the most part. Some date fucking John Mayer. Fuck you, John Mayer. You piece of crap. But I Know What You Did Last Summer is very special to me. And I didn't even really realize how special it was until I started watching it tonight with some friends of mine. And just it sent me back to 1997 and seeing this multiple times at the theater, and how I feel about it then and how I feel about it now is different. Is different, but it hits me in the feels. Like I feel this little knot right here where it's just kind of hard. Like watching something from when I was that young and seeing these actors that young and remembering the monster crush that I had on both Jennifer Love Hewitt and Sarah Michelle Gellar, Buffy. And Jennifer Love Hewitt is one of the most naturally beautiful women in the entire universe, so it was hard not to fall in love with them in these movies. But you also got like Ryan Phillippe, who's still going strong. Freddie Prinze Jr. was, Freddie Prinze Jr. had his heyday. Then he married Sarah Michelle Gellar. And he got to be involved with, he still is involved with like Star Wars, with shows like Rebels and stuff, right? So, I mean, he's gotten his. Jennifer Love Hewitt was what, the Ghost Whisperer, and she's done a lot of TV with Party of Five. She's had movies. All these people are still going strong. Families and all that. They've had their full lives, and here I am now, 46 years old, and watching this movie again after a really, really long time. I remember buying this soundtrack. And loving it a lot. But one thing I'll say is that re-watching this and listening to that music again, I was like, what the fuck? This is not as good as I remember it. Now, it still has Hush. Okay? I fucking love Hush. It's got that Sneaker Pimp song, I think, that's on there. Or whoever does that song. I love that song. But other than that, I just, I'm starting to think that maybe I just listened to those two songs on a loop. And I just bought the soundtrack for that. I wasted a lot of money. I drank a lot. I was drinking a lot back then. Another thing I remember is that when I was that age and I was seeing these movies, they felt more like horror movies. Watching it now, it doesn't really feel like a horror movie. This feels more like a drama where these people have their lives, everything going for them. Oh, you know what I mean? And then they do something incredibly stupid. One of them does something really stupid that causes something even worse to happen. And how all their lives just completely start to crumble under the weight of what they did. So if you for some reason have gotten this far, right, into this discussion and don't know what you did last summer is about, right? So these four kids in this like New England town, they're all about to go their separate ways. They're about to start going to college. And this is their last like heyday before they have to separate for the summer. This is Ray, played by Freddie Prinze Jr., is going to New York, and Helen's going to New York too. And they're all just moving on with their lives, but still together and happy. And they're just starting their lives. They're starting their adulthood. You know, Sarah Michelle Gellar was like the like town beauty pageant queen, and Ryan Phillippe's Barry is like this, you know, coming off the being the quarterback for the high school, you know, and they're coming home from a party. Barry's drunk. They've all just banged on the beach, and Barry drops a bottle of booze in the car from uh, the window, the the window in the car. Why can't I remember what you call those things? I don't fucking care that I don't remember what those things are called. But he drops the booze. They get distracted from the road. There's a guy in the road. They hit him. They think he's dead, and they have to decide whether or not to call the cops or not. And Jennifer Love Hewitt's the one that's saying, we got to do something about this. And eventually they decide to dump the body in the water and move on with their lives and take it to their graves. But before they do, they find out that the guy isn't dead. They toss him in the water and they leave him there. And then they show up a year later and everything just, their lives have been crap. They didn't move. They didn't start their lives. They didn't enjoy their adulthood. They're miserable. Barry seems fine, but Barry, I think his whole situation was, I'm rich. I want to continue to be rich and enjoy my fucking life. You know, the last thing he wanted was to be reminded of any of this. I think he's the only one in the group that maybe we don't really get to see this side, any side of Barry other than Barry's a fucking dick. But the rest of them, Ray was supposed to go to New York. He's a fisherman. Julie can't get into college. I mean, she is in college, but she can't get into it. She doesn't seem to be really being able to focus on anything. She, you know, for a woman who's as naturally beautiful as Jennifer Love Hewitt, they really tried to downplay her beauty. Doesn't help that they keep putting her in halter tops where the angle of the camera keeps shooting straight down her shirt, but for like a good chunk of this movie, especially in the beginning, she really looks kind of downtrodden. Downtrodden? No, just kind of worn ragged. And her voice even sounds rough. She sounds just like completely just awful. Like she just does not look good. Sarah Michelle Gellar, she couldn't hack it in New York. She's back at home working in her parents' little, like, it looks like a shithole, to be honest with you. It's a small town, like have it all store, like what would be like a Dollar General today, except they have like fragrances. It's like, what kind of store is this? I've never seen a small town store that looks like the store in this movie, because they've got mannequins so you can buy clothes and perfume, but it's like a department store in a small town. It's really weird. I live in a small town. There ain't nothing that looks like this store. Anyway, I'm getting bogged down in the stupid details, but that's where she works. She couldn't do it, you know, and how their relationships are just it's fragile, and they broke apart, and they're not, none of them together anymore. They broke up with each other, and it's pretty realistic, and it's pretty sad and depressing, really. It's not like intense and anything like that. Once they get past the whole, they dump the guy in the river or the water, the ocean, portraying them as, you know, a lot of things people they show in like other horror movies, you know, they're getting on with their lives and they are partying, they're living it up, and they don't understand all of a sudden when the killer just starts fucking cutting their heads off. But in this, they actually spend time with the characters, and they spend time with the effects of what they did, and the psychological effects of what they did, and how the choice that they made is ruining their lives. And that's different. And you've also got good actors being able to portray this. And I'm not saying that Jennifer Love Hewitt is fucking Meryl Streep, but she's doing a pretty damn good job. The one who's like like Ray doesn't get much to do in this. Freddie Prinze Jr. doesn't get much to do in this, and they write him as a bit of a pussy, to be honest with you. He lets Barry push him around. He lets Barry put his arms around his girlfriend's throat. If a dude does that to my girlfriend in front of me, if he goes to make a move to choke out my girlfriend, that dude is fucking done. Through the whole movie, you never really quite know what. You know, I think we're kind of supposed to think that we don't know, is Barry good? Is Barry bad? What is Barry hiding? Or Ray. I'm sorry, Ray. I'm getting Barry and Ray mixed up. What is Ray hiding? You know, as because he's on The Fisherman and you got a guy in a slicker. So I mean, his character is kind of weak and underdeveloped. But like Helen, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Julie are the strongest characters in this. And Barry's just a dick. Now, another thing that's kind of weird, and you know, if you haven't seen this movie, see it and watch this later, you know, because God, this movie's like 24 years old almost. The killer in this is a bit to me. Because the twist is, and here we go, we're talking about it, right? So, a year before the events of this movie happen, a girl dies on this stretch of road. The father of that girl blames the boy who did it. Now, on that fateful night, he went there and he killed that boy. It's the boy from the beginning sitting on the cliff. He killed that guy. And when he was crossing the road, they hit him. They hit the killer with their car. And then they decided to dump the killer's body. But they think that they killed some guy. But they left him for dead. They left him for dead. So the killer's pissed off that he lived and they didn't save him. And so he now decides to psychologically torture the people. So the guy's fucked up, right? But he also kind of seems just like a guy, like a normal guy. Clearly he's not. And we don't get a lot. And part of me likes that we don't know that much about him. But another part of me, since a lot of this movie is about character, I feel like we're missing. Like, I don't know how you give us background on this guy. You can't really do it, but I just feel like, I don't know, he's a little bit of a weak part. But all the other stuff, all the really good character stuff, I feel like it is. And and maybe I'm got rose-colored glasses on about this a little bit. Maybe I'm giving this movie some passes because of nostalgia. It's not brilliant. It's not fucking Fight Club. It's not Shawshank Redemption. But it's not as bad as I think some people would like to make it out to be. It's just not that scary, really. It's psychologically scary. When Barry dies, it's pretty bloodless. There's a sound. There's how she sees him being killed, knows he's being killed. That's scary. The music makes it tense and scary. When she dies, Sarah Michelle Gellar's death in this is like epic in a way and very sad because she's like really trying to stay alive. They really give her this really long scene of just, she's in the back of the car, she's busting out the windows. I love the energy that this character has to live. How she just shatters the police car window and there's glass everywhere and she's falling into the glass. Like, they really show her struggle to survive this scene, which makes her death even more heartbreaking. See, a lot of these movies, you don't feel anything for any of these people. You laugh, you go ha 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 ha, because they're assholes, they're stereotypes, they're douchebags. These feel like people with lives and motivations that you care about. They've made some bad choices, and they've suffered the consequences, and now they're suffering even more, and it makes their deaths impactful instead of just throw away deaths. And I think it's interesting that they don't go over the top with the kills. They don't show a lot of blood really at all. Like she's running from this guy. She jumps, like she jumps from a building window. First she gets to her store, right? She gets out of the car. She runs to her store. Her sister, played by Bridget Nielsen, who also had a bit of a career back then with Billy Madison and Mortal Kombat. Don't really see her in too much, but I haven't looked her up either. Her character's a bit weak too. She's just supposed to be kind of fodder. There's only a couple of characters in here that are fodder, like Johnny Galecki, who is screaming, kill me, kill me, kill me, with just his presence, the way his character is portrayed as the guy who wishes he was Jennifer Love Hewitt's boyfriend and just kind of shows up. And, back then, all anybody knew of Johnny Galecki was he was, David from Roseanne. He was the guy that you liked. Man, he's a real douchebag in this movie. And so when he dies, his death is probably the most violent. He gets the hook right through the throat and then dragged across the table. And then you see him later in the trunk with crabs crawling out of his fucking mouth. They treated Johnny Galecki worse than any of our main characters. Even Bridget Nielsen, who gets killed by the guy who just does this, and you see blood splatter, and then you see her like getting carried by the hook in her stomach. I don't really. Can you die from just getting a hit in the gut with the? I don't know. There are some allowances you have to make, but so she, Sarah is hiding. Helen's character is hiding in the store. She doesn't know where her sister is. All she heard was a scream. Right. The lights go off. Killer's under the tarp. I called bullshit on that because I was like, there's no way he could turn off the lights and get underneath that tarp and complete silence when he's right there in front of her. But he attacks her. She gets away. She climbs the stairs. She jumps out the window. She sees the fireworks. She's almost free. She actually can smell survival. And then she turns around. The writer, Kevin, has her turn around and turn back around. And there the guy is like fucking droopy in a goddamn cartoon. And there's a struggle. There's a fight. He's pushing her. She's pushing back. And we know that he finishes her off in the tires and everything. And to be honest, with the way it was shot and filmed, with the parade going by and it's dark and the fireworks and you can't really see what's going on in the alley between the tire stacks and everything, it's actually really effective and tragic and sad and really well done, in my opinion. Like, it's the hardest. Like, I still watch that with this kind of lump in my throat of like, I had a hard time watching it when I was young because I liked Sarah. And I had a hard time watching it now. And that's another thing, is I was invested in this. My heart was going. I was feeling bad. I feel bad now. I feel it in my eyes, where I'm just like, I gave a shit while I was watching this. Now nobody else died. The cop dies. He gets stabbed again. Pretty bloodless, not pretty tame. And I mean, the end is the end. They have this thing going on where Anne Heche is in this as David Egan's sister, the guy that they think they killed. And her character is handled weird because they keep kind of showing her like as this really odd, scary person when really she's just a lady living out in the middle of nowhere whose life has been ruined by what they did. You know, she's living off of the insurance money that they gave her. She hid the fact that he was out there to kill himself. Um, and so, or maybe he did kill himself and the killer didn't get to kill him. Maybe that's part of something I'm missing here. So hey, we're detective working, we're trying to remember the movie as it goes here. But they keep showing her like they cut to her as like some weirdo when she's not. That's a film choice. That's a filmmaking choice. Like when she runs up to the car for no reason, going, "Hey!" Like who walks up to a car like that, yelling, "Hey!" They're not moving. They're not going anywhere. Or when they go back and she's got the knife, and the way they film her all up close, like she's threatening with the knife when she's not. They clearly pull back, and you realize she's just standing there with a knife. But they go out there to talk to her, and she talks about that there's this guy named Billy, that Billy Blue, that came out there, and this is the whole red herring setup to make you think that maybe Ray is the fisherman, because Julie goes to Ray's boat and it says Billy Blue, and so she runs away thinking you're the killer, when really he's just a guy who went out there feeling bad, feeling guilty for thinking that he killed, played a part in killing her brother, and was even romancing her a little bit. When the actual killer shows up without the slicker, and you're supposed to think, oh, she's safe, but I mean, right off the bat, right off the bat, it's like, no, this guy ain't, he's up to no good. I'm glad they didn't spend too much time on it, but this would have been the time where it would have been nice for, as cliche as it is, as cliche as this moment is, to get the background, to get the real story. To have him like maybe have her trapped, and like saying like you need to know what you did, and give us the whole thing. Cause fuck it. Right? Let him monologue a little bit. Give us some background, but they don't. They give us just enough. Some of this stuff you don't know how he did. Like there's pictures that it's like, how did he get those pictures and all that, but there's a fight ensues, and he ends up, he's like, if you're going to kill somebody and, leave them for dead, make sure they're really dead, which is, you can't really leave somebody for dead. There's a difference between killing somebody and knowing that, like, killing somebody. And if you leave them for dead, you don't know that if they're alive or not. So when he says, if you leave somebody for dead, make sure they're dead. You can't do that. That's the point of leaving them for dead. You should have said, if you're going to kill somebody, make sure they're dead. Not... So maybe he did say that. I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But he gets his hand cut off and he flies into the ocean. And it's like he just got done saying, make sure, that I'm really dead. And all they find is his hand. Which is also like one of the themes that they go back to throughout the movie about the urban legends and the hook hand and was it an insane mental patient or what, And, the cops are like, yeah, we'll probably find him. We usually do. And we cut again to like a year later or some time later, and Julie's now happy and back with Ray and getting ready to, be ravaged when they see each other. And when she goes back into the shower, it's all steamy, and somebody wrote, I still know, on the shower door, and the guy comes bursting out. This is a trope and a cliche that's in a lot of horror movies where the killer comes back at the end. The thing about this one is that what we don't know is they flip it on its head for the sequel. So this scene that we think we saw isn't what we really saw when we see the sequel. We get context for what that scene actually is. So say they never made another one of these, we'd think that Julie dies in that scene. Like, ha ha ha, you still can't get away from your, sins of the past. So I'm trying to think of anything else. I thought there was a interesting. They called a place that they wanted to go to Dawson's Beach instead of Dawson's Creek. I really liked the line when she's talking to Ray because he's he's constantly trying to get her back, and she's trying to lay it out for him pretty clearly. You know, we're not a thing anymore, man. We are done. What we did, we fucked it all up. All of us fucked it all up. Our relationships are done. Like, I don't give a shit if you still, I mean, I understand why you would want to still get with Jennifer Love Hewitt, but she's pretty clear with him about it. And she's like, I'm responsible for my own actions, but I don't want to know you either. And I really liked that. She really nailed that. Like, I thought it was really, really great. So there's some trivia here if you want to know. Like, turns out that this script was written before Scream, but Kevin Williamson at the time was unable to sell it. But after the success of Scream, it got picked up. Johnny Galecki recalled doing a body cast for the scene where Julie opens the trunk and finds Max's dead body in it with a crab crawling out of his mouth. Later got a call that production was shut down because Jennifer Love Hewitt was so upset by seeing the dead body cast of him. He called and reassured her that he was very much alive. Writer Lois Duncan was vehemently opposed to her book being reworked into a slasher film. Okay, so this is apparently based on a book. Huh. It was due to the fact that her youngest daughter was murdered by an unknown assailant in 1989. Her original book wasn't that far off from a slasher, though. It's still a bunch of guilty teenagers being stalked and terrorized by a murderous madman. It's just that nobody dies in her version. So in that sense, it's more like an old school mystery. Or like a fucking episode of Goosebumps. Um... The ice inside the storage of the boat was actually made of gelatin. I was wondering that myself. I've been wondering that for a while. So that they could move around inside. I was like, there's no way they're putting her in a room full of just ice. I would have done it, though. I don't have a problem with that. The film was only shot in 50 days. And everybody seemed to have auditioned for each other's parts. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's all I'm going to really go into it. So, before we bog this down, also I think it's funny, Sarah Michelle Gellar talks about being on soap operas when, or in the future she'll be on soap operas when she was a soap opera actress, before she got movies like this and roles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And another thing I guess we should talk about is Kevin Williams' scripts. They were known for having really good dialogue, but and people became really enamored with them and really wanted him to write stuff for them, and Dawson's Creek became this huge thing. And after a while, though, it kind of became a joke of like, is this how people really talk? As snappy as the dialogue was, right? And, you know, like a lot of people were into screenwriting became, and it's still a big deal. But like there was a time in the 90s after Pulp Fiction where everybody was trying to have like the snappiest dialogue. Everybody wanted to be the next Quentin Tarantino as far as screenwriting goes. And Kevin Williamson was that one, I think, that was the closest to it, that was having that kind of snappy dialogue, that pop culture dialogue. And after a while, though, that kind of wore down a little bit and was like, nobody really talks like this. Teenagers especially don't really talk like this. And what I think is funny now is that all these years later, people actually talk more like, I think, in a Kevin Williamson script in real life because of how much pop culture has, like, infected us all. That I think if you were to write one of those movies now like this, it actually works better. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons why this screenplay is, like, I watch it now and I don't mind it as much because a lot of people do just reference a bunch of shit and talk a certain way. Maybe not quite like they do here. This one isn't full of pop culture, but like movies like Scream is. So anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed my time revisiting this. Next year we will be talking about the sequel to this. And after this movie, we are going to be talking about Scream, the first Scream. So you got that to look forward to as well this year. So if you liked this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, if you hated everything I said and thought, what is this 90s dickhead talking about? Well, we can give you back a some chunk of your life and give you a better memory. So if you like this review, please hit the like button. Don't forget to hit subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, all that jazz. If you like this, look away, put on shades. If you have a sensitivity to light, do not look right into this motherfucker. And we'll give these people a better memory. And here's something a little bit more light that might make you laugh. That has a little bit of something to do with that. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time for Scream!
What am I waiting for? What am I waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Fuck you!